Greetings this evening of your time as you create time to exist. How are you all? Oh, thank you. Allow me to begin by saying that this is my first interaction on your planet since Egypt as well, and I am quite excited about this. Also understand that you have had, perhaps somewhat publicized, of the many energy gates in your society, what you call 1111. Allow me to again express my joy at sharing with you 1212. We shall entitle this interaction, Love, Hate, and Guilt. Now, as you know, there are many forms of love upon your planet in that you express, shall we say, many separations in the concept you call love. For our particular, shall we say, discourse and explanation, we will simply utilize two expressions of love, that is, conditional and unconditional love. Unconditional love is exactly that. That would directly correspond to love which has no conditions placed upon it and is automatic, ever-flowing, ever-existing, cannot be withdrawn, for there are simply no conditions that need be fulfilled for the giving and sharing of that love. This is indeed the love of what you call God, or what we call all that is itself. In fact, perhaps more apropos is the idea that all that is unconditional love itself, and therefore cannot judge, does not contain the concept of judgment, which is the imposition of conditions, which, when not met, in a sense, the withdrawal of love results. Therefore, you may understand that when you feel what you call judgment, you are never feeling it from all that is. That is simply impossible. What you are feeling is your own created version of standards, which, when not met, then result, in that sense, to the withdrawal of self-love. Therefore, understand that as you contain the concept of conditional self-love itself, you also contain the concept of unconditional self-love. And many times, simply this being pointed out will allow you to begin, if you wish, to see when you are imposing conditions and when you are willing to love yourself completely, unconditionally. For the idea is that because all that is loves you unconditionally, and this is constant, this is never changing, that energy can always be tapped into and matched within yourself. For again, it is constant, and you can simply, in remembering, in realizing that that unconditional love exists, mimic that self-love. In a sense, you may say, simply refusing to withdraw your self-love, which you have in that sense earned. Therefore, you can be willing to not settle for any less than loving yourself. But you do contain within your society the idea you call conditional love. And when you are expressing conditional love to individuals, basically you are loving them when they meet your conditions, or when you feel that they fulfill your standards. This is not, again, exactly what you would call the love of all that is, and is perhaps one of the more unique creations of your society in being able to express within the unconditional love of all that is itself, conditions. When individuals, in that sense, do not meet your conditions, many times, still feeling a sense of self-love, still feeling a sense of deservability, you will create an emotion, a polarized expression of conditional love you call hate. And many times individuals will say, well, hate is the opposite of love. In a sense, this is true from the perspective of conditional love, but not from the perspective of unconditional love. For again, unconditional love of self results in what you would call the expression of deservability. And if you feel deserving but feel that someone has not met your conditions, you express this as hate. And what you call hate, in order to become so righteously indignant about it, does still contain some feelings of deservability. So therefore, if you have any expression of self-love, that in a sense would then not be the true opposite of unconditional love. It would be a polarized expression of unconditional love. Guilt, however, is the true opposite of unconditional love. For when you are expressing guilt, you are not realizing and acknowledging your creatorhood. You are not realizing and acknowledging your deservability, your ability to understand that you deserve to exist and you deserve to create a life of joy and ecstasy. So in that sense, guilt is the complete withdrawal of unconditional self-love, and therefore is the opposite of love itself. When you feel this, many times individuals will ascribe that it is a positive feeling, for in that sense it controls you, or shall we say, holds the reins from you doing things that are out of integrity. But understand, this is not using your creations in the most positive of ways. You need not withdraw self-love when you do not meet your conditions, and have that be a form, in that sense, of positive self-reflection. For when you withdraw that self-love, you are no longer in the centered position to, shall we say, transform your creations according to preference. And in that sense, you create a sense of perceived helplessness, through which you then create paralysis. That paralysis does not allow you once again to transform. So when you feel what you call guilt, you may use that as well as a reminder that in the moment you are creating that, you are not unconditionally loving yourself. And once you realize that you are not, then you put yourself back in the pivotal position to decide whether you wish to or not. Whether, again, after all you have accomplished and learned, whether you will settle for anything less than your complete unconditional self-love. If you do something that you do not prefer and that you find most out of your integrity, guilt, again, introduces a paralysis to transform it. Acknowledgement allows you to transform it by perhaps, again, realizing that what I have just done is not within myself or sense of self-integrity. Therefore, I understand that the feeling that I am generating tells me this. And therefore, I realize that should a similar set of circumstances come along, I will now use the fact that I have done this unpreferred thing as evidence that next time I will not. And when, and it always will, you will always create this, a similar situation comes along, you will then have the opportunity in not doing that thing to create what you call balance. There is the assumption that if you do something out of your integrity, that your karmic balance must come in the form of retribution. And obviously, I need not tell you that this is one way that you can create the balance. But another way to create the balance is, again, to acknowledge that what you have done is not a representation of who you choose to be. And when you attract, again, which you will, this is an exploration, a similar set of circumstances, and then do not do that thing that you feel is out of your integrity, you have established balance in no uncertain terms. You have allowed yourself to act as a creator, creating feedback from your reality and using that feedback with a foundational, unconditional self-love to transform it into a preferential expression. Is this clear? Is it clear to more than one? All right. When we exchange, we will allow for clarification of specifics. But again, the point is this. You always have the option. You always have the opportunity to not place conditions on your self-love. Again, all that is loves you unconditionally, and this can always be tapped into, for it is not something which ever changes. It is constant. The reminder that it is constant is all that it takes to drum up the vibration of that feeling that I am loved no matter what. If all that is, if God loves me no matter what, do I not deserve to treat myself with the same respect? If you remove the conditions of your love, you will use all your creations in a positive way. You will understand that the negative creations are results of unconsciously bought into beliefs, and that by allowing them to come up, they become conscious. If you deny a creation, you tuck it back into what you call your subconscious. If you acknowledge it, you allow yourself the opportunity to transform and change it. Again, you cannot get rid of a belief that you do not, in that sense, prefer. For there is nowhere to put it. You are the entire universe. You can, however, transform it, but again, only by putting it out on the table. And acknowledgement of an unpreferred belief puts it on the table. Denial sticks it back in, again, perhaps what we can call the subconscious closet. Once your choices are before you, on, again, colloquially speaking, the table, you then have equal access to them. If you tuck the things you do not prefer about yourself in the closet, you do not have equal access. You have surrounded and isolated the things you do not prefer and taking them out of your reach. Unconditional self-love is the willingness to use all your creations, even the ones that appear negative. And once again, we remind you what we have called the wild card, that you can always use any creation in a positive way by simply asking yourself, after perhaps you ascribe the more obvious, everyone knows societal negative label, how does this serve me exactly the way it is? This question is what we call the wild card, for you can always pull it out, and it always then completes your deck, completes your hand. Therefore, to allow for interchange and to allow for clarification of any specifics that may arise from this particular explanation, we will proceed to the interaction. Though before we do, allow me to once again, and yet for the first time, thank you all for your willingness to begin to act as a creator. This generally in your society will begin on a conceptual level as you create these separations, but understand that the having of the idea is in that moment the same as the being of the idea. So once you realize that it is a concept to self-empower yourself, in the moment you realize that, at least for that moment, you are that idea. Very often you will then create separations between yourself and that idea, but simply in bringing it up again as a concept, you become the idea. Whenever you bring anything up as a concept, in order to do so, you are the idea itself in the moment you are bringing it up. So it is very simple in that sense to become anything you wish. If you no longer draw the separation, well, I mentally know that, but how does that apply? When you mentally know it, you are it in that moment. If you choose to continue to be that, you will get that effect. If you choose after drumming it up and being it to then create separations that it was just a concept, then you get that effect. But it is all up to you. And always will be. And it brings us great joy, and the only thing, in fact, that allows us the opportunity to interact with you is the concept that you are now willing to entertain these notions, not only as a concept, but as an action in your life. For as physical beings in a physical world, the actions represent your ultimate willingness to state to the universe, in no uncertain terms, that this is who I am. You very often, in that sense, will say, well, I just believe this, but it is your actions that are the ultimate statement of your beliefs. Therefore, you can always trace back from the actions to the beliefs, but you can also establish actions that would correspond to a preferred belief and simply begin to act that way, going perhaps a bit backward. How would a person who has the belief that I wish to have act? Use your imagination to conjure that up and simply, again, act that way. For again, actions are the ultimate manifestation and statement to the universe that I believe this, at least in a physical world. And that is what we are discussing with you now, being that your choice for now is physicality. I thank you and ask you how we may mutually be of service to each other. Shedding. Ace. Greetings.
Greetings. How are you?
Perfect, as you all are.
Yes. Well, the whole subject really struck a chord with me.
Always like to play around.
Yeah, I'm wondering why you chose that. I guess I know the answer.
Well, in a sense, it simply applies to all. And in that sense, will allow for many doors to be opened within you in beginning to exercise, so to speak, into action, unconditional self-love. You are worth it. And you are beginning to explore that maybe you just are. Therefore, it is the timing. Do proceed.
Yeah, I'm kind of paralyzed now because that's such a big issue for me. And self-guilt, feeling guilty about others is one thing, but having guilt about your own actions, isn't that two things? Those are two separate things.
Well, they are under one blanket category. For the idea is the guilt, while you are creating it, is not an expression of self-love. The willingness to use the guilt to realign yourself with the self-love, then, shall we say, creates a flow and frees you up from what you are calling the paralysis. So rather than being guilty about being guilty, you can now begin to be joyous that you notice that you are guilty, that you acknowledge it, and that you remind or remember that that guilt is not an expression of self-love. Once you know you are imposing conditions, then you can decide not to impose them. When you are simply automatic, you do not allow yourself awareness that you are imposing them to begin with.
Okay, so if one has self-guilt about an issue, first thing to do is to be aware of it, right?
Ace.
Okay, so if you're aware of it and you can turn it back, I don't understand. What's the next step?
The next step is to say, what have I done that I would prefer to not have done? All right, I have done this. Well, I cannot undo that. However, should a similar circumstance come along, I will use the fact that, all right, creating much misery around having made that choice, I will not make that choice again. That is all. Just willing to have that resolve and saying perhaps, let me at it, in terms of creating it again and not doing that, can begin to turn you again on a fulcrum toward, again, realigning with self-love. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Whatever it is, and again, I will assume it to be private, that you are feeling guilty about. Can you see that given a similar set of circumstances, your actions would now be different?
There's many guilt issues in my life.
Well, go one at a time. The point is, given the opportunity to have a similar set of circumstances, would you now be willing to use that to do something else?
It's just, guilt is like the
Now, answer the question. Would you be willing, under a similar set of circumstances, pick any one of the issues, to now do something else since you know how it felt to have done the thing you feel was out of your integrity? Yes or no?
Yes.
You are in balance. Now simply go about your life, and when, perhaps if it comes along again, do what you are saying. Remind yourself, then you have used that creation, the guilt itself. Then you are treating yourself with unconditional love. Your willingness to even say, Next time, if there is one, I will not do that again, is all you need do. And knowing this, you now know who you are, and you are doing the only thing that is available to you, rather than, shall we say, lamenting about something you quote-unquote cannot change in the past. So, from what you have said to me, you have created the balance. Now simply be willing, if again a situation comes along similar, to prove to yourself and perhaps the universe by extension that you really mean that. And you will give yourself, in many of these instances, the opportunity to create a similar set of circumstances. And then you will see experientially what I mean, but it begins as an idea. It begins as the willingness to understand that judgment is the imposition of conditions, that what you call forgiveness is the willingness to once again be unconditional. Does that connect?
Definitely connecting.
Do you wish to proceed?
Uh,
Or do you wish to sit with it and perhaps see what comes up? For there will be others who will share many of your sentiments. Realize that you are loved. Even if you choose to despise and hate and destroy, so to speak, yourself, all that is will sit by unconditionally loving you through the process. And in fact, although it sounds like an irony, it is the unconditional love of all that is itself that allows you to not unconditionally love yourself. For there are no conditions. You may explore anything you wish. This is the granting of complete free will. This is the granting of complete unconditional love. Never will you lose that love. Now we are speaking again about creating, shall we say, treating yourself with that same respect.
well, I think my biggest issue is something that has been ingrained in me.
Oh, ingrained.
Yes,
All right.
since childhood.
Therefore, perhaps you can say a choice that has come up many times and you have bought into.
Yeah,
Do you wish to share it?
large part of my life.
Do you wish to share it? Perhaps we can utilize it as a transformative example.
Okay. I think guilt in my mother's death.
In what way? Did you physically kill her?
No.
Oh, in what way then?
Um,
And even if you had, you would create an opportunity to kill someone else and then perhaps not do it. But in what way are you perceiving? For it is our perception that it is not, shall we say, part of her perspective. What way are you perceiving that you have responsibility for, rather than to, her death?
well, I had a large. I felt I grew into into a role of large responsibility to her and her health, and I feel that through that period I was responsible.
All right. So then you prolonged her life in that sense. Is that what you are saying?
I'm saying that that I didn't have any.
Take your time. Or make your time.
It's just that I feel responsible for her death. Like I didn't take good enough care of her.
Can you have done any better?
No.
What is the point of beating yourself up like this? If you know that you have done the best you can, then you have been fully responsible to her. She has been responsible for herself, for her timing, for her agreements. Now, can you release this and allow her the same respect in creating her own reality as you are now viewing of respect of yourself for creating your own? Our perception is fully that you have been responsible to her to the best of your ability. So what are you creating as an obstacle to believing this?
No. I just don't know.
Well, first of all, you do know.
Yes.
So assuming that you do, now what comes up? You're getting there. Keep going. Follow the thread.
just, I don't know, nurturing comes up for me. Responsibilities for nurturing.
Well, as you have shared, you had done that to the best of your ability. You had perhaps increased the quality of the end of her life. Is this correct?
Increase the quality. I think so.
All right.
I'm not real sure on that because it was painful.
In what way?
I think it was painful for her, and it was painful for me.
What is it that was painful?
The lifestyle that we led at that time.
Do you acknowledge your own creation of your reality? Yes or no?
Yes, I do.
Do you acknowledge her creation of her reality? Yes or no?
Yes.
Do you understand that doing all that you can do to be responsible to her is the only way that you can express your creation of your reality and also allow her the same right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Therefore, are you going to continue to be responsible for her choices as well? Yes or no? And can you really even be responsible for them?
No, I can't.
All right. Are you willing to release this feeling?
Yes.
Are you willing in a similar set of circumstances to once again do the best that you can, but still allow the granting of the validity to their choices and their creation as well? Yes or no?
Yes.
You have transformed this idea. Now, how does that feel?
It feels renewing, and I'm aware of that. It just keeps coming back.
No, no, no. That is not as what is coming back. When you say it is coming back, and you think about it, what do you feel?
The memory of that.
No. What do you feel emotionally? Happiness, sadness, anger?
Weight. I feel a heavy weight of a burden.
Now, feeling this weight, feel it. Can you conjure it up?
Yes.
You are this weight. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What must you believe right now, under the specific set of circumstances that we are discussing, to feel this weight? Go with it. Say the first thing that comes to your mind without any hesitation.
I'm carrying the responsibility of her death.
Is that the belief?
That's what I feel.
All right. Now, you have seen that believing this has these feelings. And when you believe and feel something, you create thought patterns, and then you act that way, yes?
Yes.
Perhaps that is a contracted action with hesitation. Yes?
Yes.
Now, what is the preferred belief that you wish to have?
That I release and I let go and I let her die.
Close your eyes. Now, let's, all right, make believe. All right? Are you willing to play?
I'll play.
All right. Stay light. You can still have some fun and transform this at the same time.
Okay. Thank you.
State to yourself the preferred belief until you feel it and describe for me the feeling. Do not allow the old belief to creep in there for the purposes of this game. All right? State the new belief. Aloud or to yourself, it does not matter, but when you feel it, until you feel it, and then describe that feeling to me.
Could you help me phrase the belief? I'm not clear on what I should phrase.
All right. In a sense, I will allow you to do so, but I will assist. What is, for one moment, put this aside, the, again, non-preferred belief? That you are responsible for your mother's death.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
That's it.
What is the reciprocal of this belief?
That I'm not responsible for her death and that...
And you are fully responsible to her.
Yes.
Now, state this and tell me how this feels, isolating it from all other beliefs for the moment. And keep saying it to yourself till you feel it. You have all the time you need.
Well, I'll say it out loud. I release the responsibility of her death, and I let her go on. It is her choice.
Are your eyes still closed?
Yes.
How does this feel?
It feels good to affirm it.
All right. Then continue to affirm it within yourself until you build an intensity of this good feeling and describe that good feeling to me.
It feels good to release, just to see her go.
How does it feel? Do not describe the circumstance, describe the feeling in your heart.
I don't think I want to let go.
All right, well, do understand that will always be your option. And your wants factor into this. Perhaps you may wish to explore what you have invested in holding onto it. Is that obvious?
Yes.
What do you have invested in holding onto it? What do you get out of maintaining that belief?
I don't think a lot of positive things. I specifically...
What does it allow you to do? Or what excuse does it allow you to create?
To feel sorry for myself, or some sort of self-nurturing, not from myself, or something.
That is not what you are getting out of it. What do you get out of it? What does it allow you to do to hold on to a belief such as this that you do not prefer? Look at it from that perspective. Explore. Does it allow you to not do things? Does it allow you the excuse to remain stagnant? What are you afraid will happen if you do things?
That perhaps I could fail.
Ah, now we are getting down to it. May I ask you a question? If you fail, so what? What will happen? Well, what do you imagine will happen?
I just know that if I fail, it's okay. I still will exist.
May I ask you a question? What is failure to you?
I guess judgments of others around me.
May I provide my perspective of what failure is? Yeah. Not maintaining your clear intention, period. Allowing your reality to talk you out of your clear intention. For if something happens or does not happen in a given moment, it is always still an option, as we have discussed, to maintain it as an intention, and maintaining it as an intention keeps it locked into place, keeps it right there as something you will do. I intend to do this. The moment you sell yourself short and release the intention, using a circumstance in the present as evidence that you can't have it, then perhaps you can label it as a form of failure. Are you willing, no matter what happens in a given moment, to maintain your clear intention? Then you can never fail. And you will always reground yourself back into the moment by saying, all right, I intended to do this. It is not happening in this moment. Therefore, this is not the moment for it to happen. However, I still intend to do this. I will put it aside as an intention. Now that that is out of the way, what is right in front of me? This, and that. Which one excites me? This. Can I act on it with integrity? Yes. You are now back in motion. You now have overcome, so to speak, the paralysis. And by maintaining it as a clear intention, there is no such thing as failure. Does this make sense? Are you willing to do that?
Yes.
Do you now still have an investment in holding on to the feeling that you need to be responsible for your mother?
No, I see no need.
All right. It is this simple. Maintain your clear intention. Align yourself with your desires. Understand your ability to deserve. Be clear with your definitions and beliefs. And perform clear action from what is available, maintaining the clear intention if that intention is not available. You can never fail with this formula. It is the first thing that ever came through this channel, and it will continue to come through. for it is the key to consciously creating according to preference. Clear intention, clear desire, deservability, definition, and clear action. I3DA. Now allow this to roll around. We will proceed to interacting with others. Listen up. They, as well as you, are sharing in this exploration. The presence of each and every one is no accident. If you will begin to concentrate on your similarities rather than your differences, this will become most apparent. If, as we are going along, something comes up, please share again. Much has been said, allow it to sink in, and maintain your clear intention. You will then never fail.
Thank you very much.
And to you. And thank yourself.
Thank you.
If you will, understanding that this applies to each and every one of you as well, applaud this individual for his courage. Again, understand you are applauding yourselves as well. Therefore, again, we will proceed, but again, remember that if clarification is requested, butt in, as you say. Shutting.
Elan.
Ice. Greetings, O traveler of the Nile.
Greetings, good to be with you for the first time again now.
And to sense you as well. Though we have touched base.
Oh yes. Elan, just returning from Egypt, as you mentioned.
Before you proceed, have you noticed that you brought a piece back with you?
I brought a lot back with me.
Ace, you can never lose it.
Yes. Yes, I realized that I was back in Egypt again, not there for the first time.
You all were.
Yeah, they say once you drink from the Nile, you must return to Egypt. And I guess it's true. It took me about 5,000 years, I suppose, but I made it.
That is not precise, but we will allow it to slide by.
Would you like to give a more precise date or more precise timing?
It is our sensing that, shall we say, you have touched base several times. Therefore, proceed with your concept, and perhaps that will unfold as to the specifics, if necessary.
Elan, the whole trip was an eye-opener. Sometimes I felt like I was being opened up with a can opener.
Well, when you open your third eye, with an insistence to keep it shut on some level, yes, it can appear that way.
Of particular significance was my visit to the Temple of Hathor in Dendera.
What did you feel? What did you find?
When I walked in, I got hit with a pressure in the chest, like you feel when you're seeing an old friend that you've missed so much that you haven't allowed yourself to realize how much you missed them.
Well, in a sense, there are also overtones of perhaps having been killed in that area as well.
I see. In the temple itself?
Ice. With what you would call projectile through the heart.
I see. Was I well, what was my role at the time?
Well, understand again that you have had several encounters with this. In this particular instance, perhaps you can say thief. And you perhaps got what you felt you deserved.
Was I a good thief? Did I act with integrity? Or was I a scumbag?
Perhaps you can say you felt both ways about yourself.
I see. Well, I hoped for somewhat of a more lofty position.
This is relatively more recent. However, the heart energy, shall we say, in previous reincarnations was of a positive resonance with the area of vibration, where you were, shall we say, perhaps you can say somewhat royal in your presentation. Do proceed. Again, it will unfold.
In Egypt, was I primarily involved in politics, being a physician, or being a priest?
May I ask, what is the difference?
Then I've done them all?
Well, in a sense, yes.
Okay. Was Dendera and the Temple of Hathor specifically significant, and if so, how?
many ways, but one will be a direct extraterrestrial connection.
I see. With Pleiades,
Ace.
was I a priest or a politician or a physician at the time of that occurrence?
Perhaps in that occurrence you would consider again you to have primarily been priestly, but therefore then expressing the other two aspects as well.
I see. Generally, in the temples that I visited, I would find my attention very much absorbed with the main chambers, and I take a great number of photographs. When I walked into Hathor, I got hit very hard in the chest, almost choked up,
Nice.
close to tears, and I took a couple of pictures in the main hall, and then found myself, rather than proceeding through the temple, I found myself going off into side doors and up stairways and down stairways, and I found crypts that other members of the group did not find.
Well, the idea is that you were perhaps, you can say, revisiting an old house.
It was like I wanted to check out all my old favorite spots.
Nice, exactly.
I would stick things and hide things and find things.
Some of which you, so to speak, came back to later steal.
I see.
Therefore, again, integrity on the one hand and, well, perhaps we will not use your term on the other.
May I ask, during this time as a thief, were my motivations primarily selfish or?
Well, again, both. It was perhaps an unconscious recognition that some of these things were yours on some level, but again, understanding that thievery was, by your own standard, out of integrity as well. So perhaps, again, a confusion, a contradiction in understanding.
Was I violating a trust that someone put in me at the time?
Not necessarily. Again, perhaps your own sense of integrity. You were violating what was perceived to be, by the guards, a trust, yes. Hence, your swift deliverance of effect.
I see.
Very interesting, fascinating.
Was that because I failed to pay them off adequately?
Repeat.
Well, it seems like you can get just about anywhere in Egypt right now if you pay off the guard.
That was now.
I see. Then it was, they functioned at a higher level of accountability?
Perhaps, yes. Good way to put it.
I see. It seemed to me there was something at Hathor that I wanted to find. And I'm not sure if I did find it, and it was primarily an energetic type of thing, or if there's something physical that I was looking for and it's not yet time to have that in my possession.
You may understand that it is both. You may understand that there is no need to physically have it in your possession in this life. And you may understand it to relate with what you would call amulet, with a particular, shall we say, red crystalline stone within it.
Of Pleiadian origin?
Connection.
Of what artifice? Egyptian or extraterrestrial?
What we are speaking of now would be Egyptian, but again, a connection to extraterrestrial source, a symbol of the union, a symbol of the communion in that sense. Very strong and powerful symbol of, again, perhaps one of your more blatant extraterrestrial interactions, physically, of the many carnations that you have expressed yourself as.
Is that amulet physically present at Hathor or somewhere else?
One moment.
And if so, where?
It is not immediately evident, meaning that I need not know this, meaning that you will discover as you need it. But there is a sensing that it is not in what you would call museum.
It is not in a museum.
No.
It is still
floating around.
Obscure, yes.
In a sense.
Well, ironically enough, were I to come upon that amulet anywhere in Egypt, to take it out of Egypt would again cast me in the role of thief.
It would simply depend upon the circumstances of acquisition.
I see. Okay.
And again, most strongly understand that energetically, connecting with it. At this point, understanding your creatorhood will achieve the same effect as physically, and it may simply not be necessary to physically do so.
I see.
But in that sense, invoking it within your imagination and connecting with how it allows you to feel, you will establish a very strong connection.
Can you describe the shape of this amulet to help me focus a little bit more effectively on it?
We will allow you to do so and describe it to me. Close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths. Picture the deep, rich, red, transparent hue of a multifaceted stone that is not, as you say, flat within bevel, but is raised in its magnificence, attached to a metallic substance you call gold, and allow your imagination to then describe to me its shape and size.
It's an equilateral triangle.
Nice. Proceed.
And
Do you see it as simply one triangle?
no,
Or do you understand it to be intersecting
triangles, very similar to the Star of David.
Thank you. You have a clear sense. You may also understand, though, your connection with it was within what you would call Egyptian, shall we say, frame of reference, that it is far more ancient than that.
Elan, I was looking at the triangle, and all of a sudden the triangle, there was a dynamic motion, and they had one triangle pointed up, one triangle pointed down, intersected, creating the Star of David, but not in a static sense. It's in a dynamic sense. In a static, it appears as a triangle.
Ace, energetically perhaps, but understand that it would correspond to being placed upon, perhaps you can say, a base that would be what you call hexagonal. Do you see that?
I'm not sure I get the symbol. No, you mean the amulet itself placed on a base?
What you would call star, as you have said, is raised upon a flat base. That is what you call hexagonal. Thereby allowing each of the points to touch one of the, shall we say, angles of the hexagon. If this is translating adequately.
I'm having difficulty seeing it.
All right, play around with it.
I shall.
The idea is that what was important and prominent was called forth in your imagination, showing you in no uncertain terms you have the ability to connect with this.
Well, certainly the image will continue to clarify the. My sense is that the amulet itself does not so much contain inherent power as much as it awakens remembrance and knowledge in the perceiver.
Then understand that you have graduated, so to speak, for back then you did place much of the power in the symbol, and this is the difference. Now you understand the power resides within yourself as it does within all of you, and that you imbue and allow a symbol to reflect that brilliance, reflect that power. But you contain the power. Hence, you do not need the symbol any longer, though again connecting with it may open up many emotional doorways, which now allow you to function as a whole by yourself, not needing the symbol.
Is it appropriate for me to merely follow my excitement moment to moment rather than pursue the acquisition of this amulet?
Now,
Oh, that's that. I just painted myself into a corner.
Ace. I almost said absolutely not, but we will allow that to, as you say, slide.
Let me rephrase the question.
All right.
In pursuing my excitement,
This one is very clever. Watch the way he rephrases this question.
in experiencing my excitement moment to moment with integrity, is it likely that I'll set about a direct quest for this amulet?
Perhaps again, not physically, but energetically. How it allowed you to feel, how it allowed you to feel as though you could express yourself is no longer requiring the physical symbol. Your highest degree of likelihood of attracting it, paradoxically, is by forgetting completely about it.
I see. Does the amulet have significance to others?
Oh yes, many, many.
Is its physical acquisition of importance to anyone?
Well, in general, yes, for again, the placing of the power externally on the symbol.
So some have still had that power, that external placing of the power.
Ace, but it is perhaps again now ironically sensed by us that not necessarily those in possession of it.
Is it in someone's possession at this time?
There is some, shall we say, degree of likelihood of this.
Are they aware of what it is that they are possessing?
What I have just said is no.
I see. And do you sense that it's in Egypt at this time?
No.
Do you have a clear sense of where it is?
No.
I see. If I may continue.
By the way, you can, in that sense, in being willing to recreate it, have, shall we say, a replica constructed, and then utilize that as a reflective tool. But please, 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 understand where the power lies. And if it brings you joy and excitement to do so as a reflection, by all means. But if you are going to use it to create the power, you are missing the point.
I see. Since you've brought that as an option, the gold, of what carat standard is it?
The only translation that we can render is of the, shall we say, highest purity available that will still maintain a degree of what you call hardness.
I see. And the stone, what material is it?
It would correspond to what is now referred to now as ruby.
I see. Now you're saying correspond to. Then was it a different mineral?
Perhaps not, but again, that is your contemporary label.
I see. But all the materials were of terrestrial origin. Is that true?
Yes, and a very, shall we say, clear, transparent specimen.
I see.
It was in extraterrestrial possession for a time. That is the connection.
What was their purpose in possessing it?
You tell me.
They programmed it.
In a sense. Again, they understand the meaning of symbols and allowed it to be provided as an external symbol. It is quite symbolic and, in a sense, arbitrary in that way. But there was much value placed upon it at that time due to that, and that was understood.
I see. They took it to give it back energized or imbued with a power that was of very high, held in very high significance by the priests and those who were drawn to power.
In a sense.
But the power itself was merely conceptual.
The idea is they merely took it and returned it, and all the labels and significances were then added by members of your society.
Exactly.
And it was understood that this would be so.
All right, so it always was an external symbol, but not inherently a source of power.
Everything is.
I see that now.
Nice.
Not in all things, but I see it in this thing.
Well, perhaps you can expand your vision to encompass it all.
I will.
All right. When will you? Have you done it yet?
Yes, I did it right now.
Oh, all right. That's all it takes.
That's as easy as it is.
Nice. If you allow it to be.
I allow it to be.
Oh, thank you.
Elan, I had a very strong sense as I was moving from temple to temple and experience to experience that I was cataloging, really experiencing things at one level to have deeper levels and dimensions of meaning and significance reveal themselves in time. I feel complete with the trip in Egypt, and I love the Egyptian people. It's definitely third world, but there's not a friendlier and a more good-hearted and well-intentioned people that I've ever met.
You will, but I understand. There are many, many people such as this. And your willingness to vibrate with how that allows you to feel and bring that back will allow you to see that you need look no further than your own backyard. For it all exists within your immediate vicinity reality, and is simply a matter of what you choose to vibrate as, therefore attract from the soup or menu of what's available. So your willingness to express what you have brought back in those terms will attract from your immediate surroundings that same exact feeling, that same exact quality. If you do not make the separation and understand that what bringing it back means, how bringing it back is expressed, is as an action. And this brings us to how we will wish to, perhaps you can say for the time being, conclude this particular discussion. How can you allow yourself to apply what you have felt and learned? For again, you are physical in a physical reality. The bottom line is the actions. How will you apply it? If something comes to mind, share it. If not, allow this to be rhetorical and explore it. I thank you as well. Shutting. Ice.
In Egypt, I had an experience. It seems like I went to sleep again.
In what way?
I was, we were doing an exercise, getting in touch with chakras, and I stepped outside the tent. I went on the side of the tent, facing the pyramid, because what was going on in the tent was not for me.
Oh.
Something else came up.
Then you followed your feeling. Proceed.
Yeah. I saw an extraterrestrial, and I looked into its third eye. And I went into
What a spectacle.
it was like a tunnel, a wind tunnel, and a vortex. And I went diving into it. And I was there for over 15 minutes, standing still, not moving at all. I was observed by my wife. She thought I was sick or something.
All right. That is one choice.
Yes.
Of how to look at it.
Actually, I did have a conversation, and I don't know what transpired.
What is your meaning when you tell me you fell back asleep?
It seems like I was asleep. I didn't know I don't know what happened.
Have you woken up since?
Yeah.
All right. How do you interact with what was offered to you as a perspective from your wife? Do you choose to match it and buy into it? Or do you choose to say, thank you, but no thank you?
Thank you, but no thank you.
All right. Do you understand that that has been of service to you?
Yes.
All right. Did you thank her? Ah, perhaps not.
Validated it first.
Ah. Are you doing that now?
No.
Do you understand the value and that the expression of the validating of her right and reason to have her viewpoint is to thank her for the offering?
Yes, I understand.
Do you understand that you need not embody what she has said, but still have her particular story be just as fascinating without being patronizing?
Yes.
All right. Do proceed.
I got a sense that they were the conversation I was having, and I felt that it was with extraterrestrials, was something to do with what's the topic tonight about unconditional love.
That is, shall we say, a universal favorite.
Do you have a sense who I was talking to?
Is it really that mysterious?
It seems like they're showing up more and more.
Was it a familiar interaction? Concentrate rather than on the position of your body and how it felt. The feelings. Was it a familiar feeling? Ace?
I had my hands up towards the pyramid.
Now, one moment. Was it a familiar feeling?
Feeling. Wasn't a familiar position, but
One moment. Was it a familiar emotion? What you felt while you were there, did it feel familiar? I am getting to something if you will simply address what I am saying.
yes,
What did it seem like?
traditional love.
All right. Have you ever interacted with any other extraterrestrial source and derived a similar feeling?
Not an extraterrestrial. Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
All right. What was the source?
Bashar.
Thank you. Is that really so mysterious?
No.
Is there anything else?
Well, I could share with you.
Oh, please do. We always, in that sense, revel in statements. For understand, to us, questions are simply statements that you are looking for validation of externally. So if you are willing to straighten out the question mark and make it into an exclamation point, you are being more responsible for your statement, for your expression. Do proceed.
The message that Bashar gave me there was about unconditional love. And then later on, I shared that with the panel,
Ace.
that panel that you were on.
Ace.
And about, I guess it was Philip, spoke about the whatever we put out, we get back. How we've been putting out a lot of negative stuff into the universe, and we've been getting it back.
Ace. A flawless reflection.
Yes. And now that we're putting out, we're starting to put out unconditional love, we'll be getting that back.
Absolutely. And this changes the entire quote-unquote prediction.
Yes. So that the spaceships up there don't have to hang around any longer.
Well, the idea is they are only there to observe, revel, share, and in that sense, participate tangentially. You do not need to be saved. You are not drowning, and the degree of your creatorhood is expressed through your willingness to experience the degree of separation and limitation that actually makes you each seem as alone, discrete individuals. This is viewed from, shall we say, collectively speaking, us as great power and courage, not in that sense helplessness. There is no one waiting to save you. What is referred to as an upliftment is your willingness to unfold into your totality, thereby raising your vibration, uplifting yourselves to a degree where we can interact physically face to face. Not from a sense of need, not from a sense of pedestal pushing, but from a sense of sharing, as you are doing now by making a statement as equals, for we see the equality of all creation, no exceptions, not even you.
There was an interesting thing happened the first night that I was there in Egypt.
All right.
It seemed like I had a visitor that first evening. There was a bright light coming through into the curtain.
Before you proceed, when you were within the structure you call Great Pyramid, did you also feel something similar?
Yes, I did.
That was, perhaps you can say, individual guides, and I am using the term quite loosely in saying assigned to each and every one of you for what you would call the duration. Now again, this is quite loose and arbitrarily translating, but for the duration of that particular experiential excursion. Many of you have found to be particular communications individual to that particular time frame and area. This also occurred to the channel. This also occurred consciously to others and unconsciously, which will burst forth in others as well. So you may understand that to have been a direct connection to what you would call ancient Egypt. And perhaps you can say even further back than that.
Back in ancient Egypt.
Nice.
Would you care to elaborate on it?
No.
Thanks.
That does not mean we never will, but when you begin to explore to the degree of the line that we have laid down, that allows us that access.
So it's probably back into Atlantean time.
As well, yes.
Okay. Further than that, too?
Nice.
Oh, boy, that's going to be a great journey.
They all are.
Yes. Okay. Is it possible to find out who the spirit guide was?
Nice. By asking. But not asking me. Understand the nature of guides is that they are accessed internally, not externally. Therefore, your greatest degree of clarity and connection lies within. When you are turning outward and asking such a question, you are invalidating, so to speak, the directness of your connection. And you are, shall we say, rather than using the telephone, attempting to yell across a great distance.
Okay. I understand.
We thank you.
I will be in contact with you tonight.
All right. Allow me now to pause for a short break, which we do request will last 10 to 15 of your minutes of counting, and then we will resume contact at that time. There are others who wish to share, and we would not want to miss it. All right, I'll say 10 to 15 minutes. All right. Allow us to continue. And as we were just about to say, if there is a clarification specifically requested, do proceed. Ice.
I kind of am, I would say, struggling with the situation of having to get involved with a business association with people that I'm not sure about. And every time I think about going into the business, I get this horrible feeling of fear riveting through my body. And
all right. Do you sense that this feeling of fear is a perceptive intuitiveness, or in that sense, the idea that something that you do not prefer is most likely?
That's what I'm trying to decide. Is it my fear of committing to any work, or is it a reality that this is a dangerous situation and my body's saying don't? I don't think I should have such a horrible feeling every time I think I'm going to get tied up with them. You know.
Well, first of all, understand that whatever you feel is what you feel. Allow yourself at first to feel that rather than labeling that it should be this way or should be that way. But closing your eyes, sitting up straight, breathing deeply, what is, again, the first thing that comes to your mind in terms of, is this fear specific to your intuitive knowledge of the situation, or is it a overall fear? What is your first perception most strongly? Without hesitation, answer.
That if it was other people, I wouldn't have the fear.
Ah, now, this tells you in no uncertain terms that that is the case.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to now allow your actions to be reflective of what you know to be true for yourself?
Well, it's going to be tricky to get out of the situation because I feel very, it feels as though I'm being led into a lion's den. So to extricate myself is going to be a task.
do understand that being led implies following. And following implies you are on your own volition, your own control, and choosing to follow.
Right.
Meaning you can turn around.
That's it. So far, I've been following, and I want to turn around.
All right.
But they are also very needy, and I want to help them. So it's out of obligation, compassion that I feel like I'm walking into this.
Do you feel that doing something for them instead of allowing them to do it for themselves is truly fulfilling a need or creating a new sense of need?
Yeah, it's creating a codependency, a mess.
All right. So therefore, what you are saying is not truly what you are providing anyway.
Yeah.
So now what will you do? For this is the bottom line.
Now I must make that decision and do it gently.
Well, you just have made the decision. Now, be willing to embody it. And if, in that sense, you feel that your approach in doing so is gently, all well and good. That is your compassion. Without feeling sorry for them, you can feel, in that sense, what they are feeling, a form of empathy. But once that empathy devolves into sympathy, you are feeding their own feelings of disempowerment. You are, in a sense, agreeing with them that they do not have their own power. So sympathy in that sense, at least in that sense, is not constructive acknowledgement of not only your own power, but their power as well. And what you are saying that you are providing in the form of assistance, if it is merely allowing them to continue to create a need, is not truly filling any need.
Right. Yeah.
Now what will you do?
I wonder how much to do for them before I walk away from the situation. And there's something else, which is, does it mean that once I love myself enough, I can walk away from this and won't create these situations?
Ace. Absolutely, but you already love yourself enough. Now simply be willing to remind yourself in moments where you doubt that is so. And remember, when you doubt that is not a lack of faith. That is having faith in something else, perhaps that you don't love yourself. And you get to choose once you realize where you place the trust, where you place the faith. Once you realize that, you get to choose where you wish to. So understand that you already fundamentally love yourself. What it is a matter of is, again, removing any conditions through which you will express that love. It is up to you to completely, unconditionally express that love to yourself. And you need not express unconditional self-love at the expense of someone else. Unconditional self-love automatically increases your ability to unconditionally love someone else. But very often, unconditional love for someone else is the full allowance to allow them to be who they are choosing to be. Allow them to experience what they are choosing to experience. So it may come off from their perspective as a form of indifference, but it is truly a very attached form of detachment. For you are, in empowering them, establishing the attachment, but you are detaching yourself for being responsible for them, which is, again, in a sense, a disempowering notion.
Right. And then I'm thinking of lending them or giving them a car so that they can do their work if it's separate from me. And that seems like unnecessary, you know.
In a sense, from my particular perception of what you are saying, it is a form of guilt, as we have discussed.
It is, yeah.
And therefore, a disempowerment to yourself and them as well.
So,
Now, if you are doing it because you love it, and it brings you excitement and joy to do so, then you are doing it out of self-love and love of them. If you are doing it out of, shall we say, shame and guilt,
yeah.
then everyone is, in that sense, being disempowered.
Okay, so then they're on their own, and they might seem stranded, but they'll deal with it, right? It's not.
Well, they dealt with it this far utilizing your assistance. Therefore, either they will attract a similar symbol or have the opportunity to begin to do it themselves. but you can do so in your full integrity with, again, an unconditionally loving overtone. For if you are doing it for an empowering reason, you are doing them the greatest service possible within the circumstance. If you allow them to perpetuate their disempowerment, again, that is what will be, shall we say, felt and expressed through them, the disempowering notion.
Good. Okay. I think that's enough because you only have 10 minutes, and I thank you.
All right, there is no time limit whatsoever. Was there something in terms of a clarification requested from what we had discussed at the beginning of this interaction in terms of love, hate, and guilt?
Well, yeah. Well, no. My issue is self-love and guilt. I feel I have to give, but I don't know how to receive. So receiving self-love is probably the hard part.
I know that it does not generally translate well into your language, but perhaps in expressing to them, I love you so much I could not possibly give you this car.
Right.
You will be getting the idea and expressing it and allowing them to see that a form of unconditional love is the willingness to grant them their power and not allow them to use you as an excuse. If you're not there, I have no power. That is their choice, and that is not completely accurate. If you buy into it, you can get the effect of it. But what you are now discussing is not buying into it, is not feeding their own disempowerment. And also, again, understanding, and allow me to be emphatic about this. You do love yourself. Perhaps you do not always express it, but you always fundamentally embody it. So begin to, rather than feeling you need to achieve self-love, keep reminding yourself, oh yeah, I love myself. Almost forgot. Oh yes, I love myself. I already do. All that is does, I will not argue with all that is. Is this practical? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Shutting.
Elan,
Ace, male, then male.
Elan, a couple of things. Firstly, I'd like some definitions, if you can.
Oh, all right.
I find definitions very, very useful. Helps clarify what you're doing. So if I just give you a quick list, could you give us some quick definitions?
All right.
Okay, anger. How would you define anger?
Anger is simply alignment. It tells you when you are looking at a particular issue, place, person, or thing, this is who I am, this is not. Now, this generally devolves, so to speak, into what you call judgment and invalidation of the thing that you are not. But true anger, that alignment which allows you to realign yourself with your purpose, only lasts 10 to 15 of your seconds. Hence, sometimes you have the expression, count to 10.
Okay.
Will that do, or was there something more specific?
I understand what anger is, but I've been battling to define it as a precise definition.
Alignment.
Just alignment?
Ace. It is one form of alignment.
All right.
Also, what you call laughter, what you sometimes call crying, is also an expression of alignment.
Yeah.
In general, anger is, this is me, but the thing you are quote-unquote angry about is not me, whereas laughter is, this is me.
Thank you. Now, fear?
One moment. To expand, anger is alignment through the exploration of differences, where laughter would be alignment through the exploration of similarities.
Thank you. That's good. Okay, definition of fear.
Fear is believing that a reality that you do not prefer is most likely.
Yeah, good. Terror?
Terror is really believing that. And also, in that sense, with the over or undertones of completely not creating your own reality. Hence, something can slip in and happen to you, thereby a denial that everything happens from you. It can also, perhaps you can say, be what you call an instinctual defense mechanism. But once it becomes conscious, no longer needs to be interpreted in that way.
Okay, thank you. Guilt?
Guilt is the complete removal of self-love, the imposition of conditions, and the assignment of no value to who you are, the complete opposite of unconditional love itself.
Beautiful. Thank you. Grief.
Grief is, in that sense, the expression of the belief that something can be lost, which it cannot.
Yes, okay. Despair. What is despair?
Despair, in a sense, is generally an expression of grief, whereby, once again, the perceived helplessness through the belief that you do not create your own reality results in believing that something can be lost, that there are things external from you which are not part of you and can then henceforth be lost.
All right. Now, with despair, incidentally, it's often a point to which, from which people transform. It's like the bottom of the rung.
Well, that is one way to transform, yes, but it is not the only way.
Okay.
You have an expression that once you are at the bottom, the only place you can go is up. But you can simply, in that sense, embody up from wherever you are. You need not fall to the bottom to then go up.
Okay. Anxiety.
Anxiety is the energy of excitement interpreted through negative terms. Rather than utilizing it as an alignment, you utilize it as, perhaps you can say, a form of doubt or lack of trust in the thing that you prefer.
Okay, now let's look at the positive side.
Oh, this is fun.
Yeah. Joy. What is joy?
Joy is the willingness to express the things which are reflective of who you choose to be.
Okay, how does that differ from ecstasy then?
They are, in a sense, akin. In general, what you call ecstasy will be an intensified form of joy. When you, in that sense, embody who you chose to be through the fulfillment of your excitement in every given moment, the momentum of, perhaps you can say, successive joys is an ecstatic explosion.
So okay, so joy would be a number of excitements, like a continuation, as it were, an experience of a continuation of excitement, would you say?
Perhaps you can say ecstasy is the embodiment of truly being willing to be who you chose to be in positive terms, according to preference. This is the emotion that corresponds to the belief that that is so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. That's the definitions. Now another topic, if I may.
Now, by the way, were you to ask this at a different time, you could get completely different answers. This is simply, in that sense, the momentary sensing of a particular presentation of these ideas.
Very good. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I'd like to just address the topic that I'm involved with, and that is the notion of world harmony. And you've heard this spoken to by other people, Ted Hall in particular.
Ace, Theodorable.
Theodorable, yes. He sends his love, by the way, to everyone here and yourself.
We thank you.
He did have a question, if I may, very quickly.
Oh, very quickly. Time's up.
Time's up.
Oh, go on.
He's had some information presented to him, which is apparently from scientific realms on this planet, that the ozone layer, in fact, is been depleted far more extensively than first thought.
That is not our perception.
It's not?
Also understand that, as well as the negative connotations assigned to the symbol, that it is also, in a sense, a reflection of the opening of, perhaps you can say, the crown chakra of the planet itself. So it truly, in that sense, depends on the way you choose to express that idea. You can express it as the lessening of protection, or you can express it as your particular ability to now absorb that much more energy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure you'll be glad to hear that. Now, just back to world harmony. I've been working on this for some time. Well, not working, playing really, traveling, meeting people, and it's really starting to come together in a very wonderful way. And I've achieved this by following my excitement with integrity, as you know. What I've suddenly realized is what I'm creating here, or starting to create, is the foundation of a new society.
Ace.
And the opportunity for people to join in this means that everyone can be part of this.
Ace.
People often ask me how many members you got, and I say 5.5 billion people.
Ace. Simply some have not chosen to yet activate their membership.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So it's like a crystal seed, and I feel all we need to do is just create this small group, perhaps, of people who are willing to express and operate and live that way, and it'll grow.
Well, in a sense, you create a bubble. And as you are willing to embody that bubble, you attract many other bubbles, which then coalesce into a larger bubble.
Yes.
Finally, in that sense, encompassing your entire planet and its inhabitants.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, that's about it, I think, for the moment.
All right. If there is more, we will share again.
Okay.
Back there.
Yes, just one thing, comment about self-love.
All right.
I did this one time. I looked in the mirror and I had no judgment on myself.
Well, how exciting. How did that feel?
Ecstasy.
That is looking your true self in the eye and acknowledging it as a reflection. That is what you are as an expression within all that is. All that is admires the reflection of you. Now it is perhaps up to you to mimic that vibration and admire that same reflection in yourself.
Now, I took that as being unconditional love.
Ace. And that is how simple it is. Your mirror, in a sense, is a metaphor for everything external is a reflection of your internal consciousness. And in fact, perhaps more appropriately speaking, what you consider to be your internal consciousness, your body consciousness, is actually within your overall consciousness and not the other way around. Proceed.
Just a comment. That's a.
Oh, thank you.
Elan,
Ace.
greetings.
Greetings.
I have two subjects. The first one, Thursday in Egypt, I finally met a person that I was greatly attracted to, Janice Nicholas from Perth, Australia, whom, of course, that afternoon you had a one-on-one session with.
Ace.
My question is, can you tell me whether we might be soulmates or knew each other in past lives, some such connection?
There is a strong momentum behind that idea. But what is it you are really asking?
Well, I intend to correspond with her, but how in the world does somebody strengthen a relationship with somebody who's all the way around the other side of the world?
Ah, thank you. By expressing perhaps expectancy that something will come of it, but not having rigid expectations that it must come in one form or another. What I am saying is allowing it to be what it is, rather than insisting that it must be something else. Once you are willing to do that, then it will present itself as to what it is more clearly.
Well, it's good that we both believe in miracles. That helps.
Now, in that sense, what do you mean?
that what
Not going to let you get away with that one.
that things can occur that in normal third density thinking, it would be ridiculous to think that anything might happen between two people who met for 2 days and then live on opposite sides of the world. Forget it.
I then assume that perhaps you have not understood what I have said, for that is implying a specific expectation.
No,
Do you understand?
I really don't have a specific expectation.
Well, understanding that miracles are the rule rather than the exception, what would then seem so miraculous about this?
I would just like to see a relationship grow.
In a particular expected format or however it will develop.
Any way at all
All right.
will be very acceptable.
Then I promise you, in that sense, guarantee you, if you approach it from that perspective, it will occur and be what it is and deliver to you what it needs to allow you to that much more fully express who you choose to be and nothing less.
Did you indicate earlier that maybe we did have some connection in past lives?
Ace, but your particular ilk toward feeling that is what tells that to me, rather than a specific sight that I need have. And therefore, if you wish to explore that, go right ahead. But what will enable you to tap most strongly into it is the commonality of exploration in this life with her specifically. That will allow bleed through from similar explorations in other lives. I remind you, you have lived thousands and thousands of lives, all of you. So the reason it may sometimes only seem like a few is some of them are simply completely irrelevant to what you are exploring. And the ones that come as the past lives are simply the ones that have some degree of commonality. So explore what the relationship means to you, and that will provide the commonality for what lives will then stand out in relief, if that's even necessary. For sometimes that may provide a distraction for what's going on in this life.
In the here and now, maybe it's the law of attractions that really is going on here, and that likes attract likes, and that's why I was strongly attracted to her.
Ace, but again, your willingness to accept whatever form it comes in will allow you to be more receptive for things you may have missed if you very narrowly focused on only expecting a particular thing. You may, when you narrowly focus on only expecting a particular thing, miss the point altogether.
Okay, I shall remain general, if you will.
But what I am referring to again is that one would need to be the one rather than a one.
Well, I assume that we all have more than one soulmate.
Ace. But if there is to be the one in this life, what will enable you to realize that most fully is relaxing that definition, paradoxically most times, rather than insisting on that definition. That allows the space for the comfort of all to come forth and then be compared and explored. Allows you to get to know each other without the defenses.
Okay, very good. Next subject, second subject.
All right.
When a person opens up to who they really are, remembers more of who they really are, could you talk about what kind of stages or phases they go through as they progress further and further into fourth density, and maybe some of the issues that arise because they start to see themselves and behave rather drastically different maybe than normal third density behavior?
All right. In general, what will occur as you are willing to dive into self-exploration is that things that, again, we have labeled were stored through denial in the subconscious closet will begin to pour forth. They do so in the form of emotions. In general, if they are non-preferred beliefs, they come in the form of negative emotions. If one denies those emotions, back in the closet, knocking louder upon the door. If one acknowledges those emotions and then doesn't stop at that point, but upon the acknowledgement and feeling of those emotions, traces them back to the belief, well, I feel this negative way. What must I believe to feel this? They then get the opportunity through acknowledgement of those beliefs to choose the new beliefs and the new actions that accompany them and empty the closet. Through the denial, however, the closet gets, shall we say, repacked. And again, the ideas being that they are, shall we say, desiring to be expressed, knock louder. Does this fit what you are asking?
No, let me be more specific.
Well, understand that I do understand where you are coming from. What I have said addresses one aspect of it, but please do be more specific with your brother.
My brother thinks he's Jesus Christ.
Well, you all are.
The second coming, okay.
Well, one moment. We have discussed this before.
Right.
The second coming is not to occur through a single individual. It is the expression and embodiment of the Christ Spirit, the unconditionally loving of self and other spirit, through each individual. Jesus, shall we say, the embodiment, is not necessarily completely synonymous with the Christ Spirit. For you separate Jesus, the embodiment, as being separate from you. And the Christ Spirit is within each individual. Now, Jesus and the Christ Spirit are truly one and the same. I am saying there is a perception of separation. But just as Jesus and the embodiment and the Christ Spirit are one and the same, the point of the embodiment was to show you you all contain the Christ Spirit. Therefore, you are all Christ's. Some of you in waiting, but nevertheless all Christ. And the second coming is the acknowledgement of this expression and spirit within you. Reminding perhaps him that that will occur to everyone, then allows him to see that this is simply his version of it, not that he needs strongly identify with the embodiment of Jesus. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it's just that
There is also a great deal of denial going on, which is why I laid down that foundation. There are negative emotions coming up, I need not tell you. They are not being looked at from the perspective of the Christ creatorhood, of what must I believe to be creating this. Therefore, there are more beliefs being stuffed back into his closet, so to speak, and there is a pressure being created by the louder knocking. That is one aspect.
yeah,
The other aspect is perhaps again, the non-acknowledgement of the Christ within everyone. Not to take away from his special expression, but to grant the equality and validity within all. To welcome the awakening of that spirit within him, but not in an exclusionary way. And not needing to adopt someone else's name.
that does fit because at this point, my perception, he feels quite superior.
Ace.
Okay.
We are also addressing that, but are also addressing that the unconditionally loving Christ Spirit within you all does not promote fear, which is powerlessness, the feeling of powerlessness. So you may share that as well.
I'm just not sure that I know I'm not responsible for him, but I'm trying, I'm working, I'm playing, I'm doing,
Very crafty.
responsible to him. And, I'm out of ideas, I guess, because it's like water off a duck's back.
Well, the idea is all you can do is offer the gift. And as we have used as the analogy, with the receipt, in case he wishes to return it. The true giving of the gift is the giving of it. Here, this is yours. Do what you want with it. Use it, throw it out. It's up to you. I give this to you freely because I love you. Period. The insistence is matching that resistance within him.
Most recently, I've been pushing the idea that, like the rest of us, he deserves to experience the consequences, plus or minus, of his behavior.
Well, that is automatic. He cannot, in that sense, avoid that. What you put out is what you get back, and that is automatic.
Well, part of that is how do I receive some of his edicts or commands or demands or whatever. He's not looking for disciples. He's looking for hand servants and slaves.
Well, you are not, in that sense, willing to fulfill that role, for it would be not only the disempowerment of yourself, but the acknowledgement of the disempower in him, for it implies that he need control something externally, which then expresses the lack or feeling of lack of control internally. So lighten up. Allow him to give his gifts as well. And in clear, unconditionally loving terms, say thank you or no thank you. But still saying thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank yourself.
Yeah.
Nice.
I had a question, but first I want to make a comment on Cecil's questions.
Oh, please do, and speak up. We would not want to miss it.
It feels like his brother is being in a certain way, but Cecil is the one who is learning more from it.
Oh, thank you. Not perhaps more, but as much
Okay.
from what his brother is expressing. And this is of service.
My question was, I was wondering, besides you, yourself, and Bashar, are there other beings from Essassani that are in touch with us?
Ace, many.
And do we know?
Now, not always do individuals, shall we say, decide to, using your slang, pick up the ball and run with it. But there are many agreements in place. Perhaps you can say relatively few individuals actually choose to embody it due to the fact that this is somewhat unconventional in your society. But it is still offered. And as perhaps some of them become in touch with some of the individuals, such as the channel before you, who are willing to express this idea begins to wake more up within them as a discrete possibility. But there are, shall we say, many individuals expressing it in some terms, on some level. It is increasing. But again, we have unconditional agreements. Therefore, there are no insistences that they must be played out. Though it brings us great joy when they are, we also understand the timing, the right, and the reason when it does not. But there are more individuals than perhaps you are aware of beginning to awaken and express this idea. Interestingly enough, they do not always ascribe it as an extraterrestrial source. They may interpret it in many ways, some of which will be angelically interpreted, some of which will be interpreted as simply spirit guides. There is not always even the necessity for there to be the distinct and discrete label of who we are as coming from where we are, as much as the information, which is what is important to us.
And can you tell us what is the female counterpart? I mean, this is the first time I heard that word.
Oh, all right. You will understand that as a physical expression, you have an oversoul. And so does, at this level of understanding, each and every one of you. What you call your soul, your oversoul, your higher self does not matter. But there seems at this level to be a separation. You have one oversoul, you have another oversoul, and so forth. When one oversoul expresses more than one individual in the same contemporary time frame, this is called counterpart consciousness. You may understand that your oversoul expresses what you call reincarnationally, and these are your other lives lived in other time frames. But you also, from time to time, for specific reasons, will express more than one life in the same time frame. You have a similar relationship to what you would call your past and future lives, but this is known as counterpoint consciousness. In our ancient understandings, we drew these similar types of separations, and according to that particular frame of thinking, you may still, shall we say, interpret that on some level of understanding, I have a discrete oversoul which is shared by several other of my contemporaries. But as one expands and begins to, shall we say, incorporate all these into a singular idea, it is now more the notion from our perspective that we all ultimately, our oversouls, so to speak, this is quite arbitrary, ultimately trace back to having a single oversoul. So on the one hand, all individuals in our society are counterparts on that level, but there are still breakdown and distinctions, perhaps you can say remnant thinking, so to speak. So therefore, my female counterpart would be the one that I represent from your particular definitional understanding as sharing the same oversoul. Does that make any sense at all?
Little bit.
Oh, all right. It gets a bit complicated, for we are discussing multidimensional concepts through a unidimensional, so to speak, perspective.
So would your female counterpart be coming through some other channel?
That is altogether possible and likely, though it is also at the disposal of this channel from time to express it, when there is a particular reason to have an overtone of what you call a female style of energy. For we still do embody as male and female, and in that sense, different nuances will occur through that idea. Also, for your own identification, since you still very strongly identify, societally speaking, with male and female.
Can you tell us the name of your female counterpart?
Once again, we have no names per se, but the designation that we have assigned to counterpart consciousness of myself, Elan, and again, this is quite arbitrary, is Anya.
And speaking about names, does big nose mean anything to you?
Repeat.
Big nose.
Big nose. All right. Not by that particular vibration. What does it mean to you? In other words, we do not recognize it by the name. So what is the energy behind it? What does that particular nomenclature, big nose, mean to you?
It's a name given to me, used by a particular being for me.
All right. It would simply, in a very specific sense, point to the idea that your expansion will also be embodied by the expansion of your physical senses themselves.
I didn't understand that at all. The last thing is,
As you expand your consciousness, your physical senses will also expand. Your ability to see perhaps beyond what you will have considered in that sense to be your normal, everyday reality. And in this case, again, there is an emphasis upon your particular sense of smell. What does this mean to you?
I have been smelling things or whatever smells which are not supposed to be there.
Exactly what we mean. In terms of an expanded sense of hearing, you would perhaps seem to hear things that would seem to quote unquote not be there. You are simply expanding your sensitivity. In terms of sight, you may see things, particularly at first, out of the corners of your eyes. You are now beginning to expand your vision. You have a very strong relationship with what you call sense of smell, and therefore are simply in that sense expressing it through that sense at first. You will also notice the other senses, touch and so forth, to also begin to expand as well. Feeling. Sometimes, just to expand and continue the thought, individuals will more and more feel as though something has touched them, so to speak, brushed by them, so to speak. And this would be an expression of the expansion of your sense of what you call touch. You are literally beginning to increase the sensitivity of these senses to extend beyond your merely one seeming dimension of experience. So enjoy.
Yes, I have no problems about that. I have kind of a strange question.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Do beings that are in touch with us ever lie?
Repeat.
I don't know what to call them, but I'm saying beings.
No, what I am saying is repeat the question. The ears of the channel did not receive it.
Oh, okay. The beings that we are in touch with, do they ever lie?
They provide perspectives which may or may not agree with your own perspective. So that is an arbitrary thing. They may provide a reality which is simply irrelevant to you. From the overall perspective, it is quote unquote true, but not your particular truth. Also, sometimes you will in that sense be given information, again, not only through similarities, but through differences. This allows you to establish your own empowerment in saying, I do not agree. I do not agree is an empowering notion, rather than simply being, all right, led around by the nose.
Yeah, Alex. Thank you very much.
Do you understand? Do you?
Kind of.
The idea is this. If you only agree with everything, whether or not your heart of heart tells you that that is not so, simply because it is coming from a particular source, you are in a sense disempowering yourself when you do that. Therefore, your willingness to stand up and say, I don't agree, and I am who I am. I validate your right to say that. I understand it is true for you, but it is not true for me, is an expression of empowerment. And this is the common, shall we say, job of many of the guides in that sense, to allow you to establish who you are through what you agree with, but also through what you do not agree with. Does that make more sense?
Yes, if I'm more specific, maybe you'll understand.
All right.
it's not about me, but if they claim they are somebody, and they are not that, I'm talking about that kind of line. Do they? You always say ask them who they are, and if they claim to be a certain being, and I feel like no, that's not true.
All right. Can you be more specific? And also understand sometimes it can simply be in the spirit of what you call play and fun as well. But can you provide a specific example? What was said that you choose not to believe?
I think I should just start trusting mm, the feeling I get from the vibrations, because I can differentiate between the different vibrations.
Oh, all right.
Except I think sometimes I'm not paying attention. I just go by what they are saying, and then I realize, oh, this is not the same being that I thought was.
Will also understand that, societally speaking, you still create the notion, though you are one whole consciousness, that you have many voices or parts of yourself. So very often, what you may be experiencing is a part of your own self, shall we say, putting its 2 cents in, which again allows you, in no uncertain terms, to either say, well, all right, I agree, or that is perhaps dated, that no longer applies to who I am. Thank you for pointing that out. You will begin to differentiate more concretely between what is, quote unquote, an external, and I mean this in the most arbitrary of ways, contact, and what is simply embodiments within your own mind or thinking, making themselves known, allowing you to evaluate, perhaps again, aspects of your closet coming forth to allow you to decide whether you wish to have that or do not wish to have that, which is of service to you. It allows you to develop your discernment. Are we getting there? And if not, please proceed.
What if I will apply this to my situation, and I think it will make sense.
All right. Well, we will in that sense speak again, whether it is quote unquote externally or internally. And as you in that sense employ what I am saying and then get the result, perhaps it will be obvious. If not, we will speak again, so to speak. All right?
Yes, and I can see that there is no point in getting angry, because
Well, there is a point in getting angry. It aligns you. What perhaps will not serve you as directly is then judging the thing that you decide when you align is not reflective of who you are. Simply allow it to be all right. Say, this is what I agree with. This is what I do not agree with. Perhaps I feel that anger to show me that I do not agree with this. But now that I know that I don't agree with this, it's all right for someone else. Do you understand?
yes,
All right. Is that all?
yes, thank you.
Oh, thank yourself. Nice.
Speaking of those energies, I've been feeling a lot of these, I think, very ancient energies around me, and I've been sensing them through the elements. Let's say drops of water, snow falling, wind blowing, things like that. It's been really exciting about it.
Oh, thank you. Literally, your environment is within you and not the other way around.
Yes.
As you again expand your consciousness, you always then begin to realize in that expansion that the reality that you used to believe you existed within exists within you, much as waking from a dream. In the dream, you are doing it, you are within it, you wake up and know it is within you. It is a direct and applicable analogy.
Well, is it possible that I was speaking to Darlene, a friend of ours here, on the phone today, and we both heard the same kind of thud bump while we were speaking about a certain subject?
Nice. You were aligned in that sense and creating a shared, expanded sense.
So it was the same energy that we both heard.
Oh, yes. This will occur more and more.
Yeah. Yeah, we were speaking specifically about my chamber, the chambers that I've been exploring, caves, whatnot. And it's, I think that we both have something to do with that in the past.
Absolutely.
And we found that out through this life that we're both having.
Understand. Perhaps it will seem in your linear time frame as a very delayed response, but what you were both hearing was literally an echo of a sound that you both co-created long ago.
Yeah. Well, in brief, I like to share my last experience in the cave. It was Thanksgiving. I don't know. I'm a little unclear about it because I feel like I've been having dreams that I have been going there physically since then, which is really unusual.
Well, not really, but all right, if you say so.
But this was specifically Thanksgiving, and a lot happened. I had a wonderful time. I was facing into the blackness. I was in a different position than usual. I had more visions of glittering oceans, and this time a landmass started to move into the glittering oceans. I started to accept that as Bimini or the Bahamas.
In a sense, yes.
Maybe Atlantis.
Ice. More directly.
Yes. And a lot of things happened. I opened myself to a lot of past lives. I've received many things. Specifically, one was a woman with a raincoat over her head, smiling at me. Things about NASA, about the space program.
To some degree, in the next interaction, we will discuss this a bit.
Something about Mark Twain. I saw an image of a man with a big white hair, white mustache. I thought Mark Twain. And lastly, I affirmed to myself that I was ready to open the door. So I did. I physically opened a door in the blackness of this cave, and my surroundings were green. And I accepted that I'm on Essassani.
Nice. Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Yes. And you were there and many others. And I greeted you and I said I loved you. And it sounds kind of awkward, but we made love.
Well, in a sense.
In a sense, I know. It's very unusual, but it was moving.
Understand that what you will perceive to be the co-created empathy between us, in being a shared, in that sense, form of consciousness, is analogous loosely to what you call your sexual act. For as you, in that sense, in your reality, with your style of expression in what you call sexuality, engage and share in that particular expression, you perhaps now, fleetingly or momentarily, are able to experience as the other individual in what you call perhaps the orgasmic state. So therefore, since this is how we all continually and only perceive each other, at first it may feel similar. So that was an interpretation.
Yeah, and I also got it as a reflection of my own self-love.
Nice, and we thank you.
Yeah, and you reflected that to me.
Well, you reflected it to yourself and allowed me to be the mirror, and I thank you.
Yeah, and I remember distinctly about Essassani that I heard the wind in the trees. There was a breeze in the trees.
Nice.
And that was really moving to me. And I asked to be shown around, and I was. And I saw maybe mountainous areas. And then I said, show me other fourth density societies. So we went off into this little scout craft, literally. And then I looked at you and I said, what was it about those past lives? So we immediately left that. And I went back and answered them for you or for me. And most distinctly, I came up with this big one about that I was a spiritual overseer of building the chamber that I was in.
Oh, thank you. Now you are being responsible for yourself.
Yeah. And I wore a long robe. I held a staff. I was an overseer, and I was more of a liaison to the ETs, through the workers.
Do you recognize a similarity in the staff?
Yes. Thank you. Most definitely. It was much longer then.
Ace. In a sense, this is a reflection of it, not the precise idea.
Yeah. And it was really great. And as far as being a spiritual priest overseer, I feel like I perhaps was one of many. But I know where others are, I think.
Now that you are willing to acknowledge this, you will attract, in that sense, the direct incarnated reflections of them. And may find to some degree you already have, no more will I say.
So that was specifically last time we spoke about the past life that I should tune in.
Nice.
I believe it should be. It was quite empowering and great. And
Bring that feeling into this life and you will understand why you are remembering it here and now, and apply it as well to the earlier idea that we had discussed with you this evening. Call it forth. Allow yourself to vibrate in harmonious resonance with that you, the embodiment, the expression of that you.
of that past life,
Nice.
I see no similarity, but I'll work on it.
Well, in a sense, the unconditional love is the similarity.
Okay. Do you add anything more to that life at all?
What more is there to add? You have said it all.
I know. I just want some more details.
You had very nice long hair.
I did.
Nice. In a single braid down your back.
Yeah.
Perhaps that is not what you are asking,
No,
but
that's great.
surprise.
That's wonderful. That's nice details. I like that.
Oh, thank you. There will be but a few moments remaining to this interaction over here.
This is a clarification on what you talked about originally.
Oh, thank you. For that provides clarification for all.
You were talking about unconditional love, and that's something that I'm finding a little difficult to understand. We know love in different forms, love for a lover, love for family, and sometimes we feel an emotion attached to it, sometimes we don't. There's just a respect. I'm not sure what that unconditional love for other people would be like, or how it would be experienced. For example, the people in this room I can feel a connection with, but you don't, and an acceptance, and there's no sense of problem in dealing with people or talking with the people here. But that's not always the case with people that we meet. There are people we say that don't necessarily want to be in their presence, even though you try to accept them and respect them. Can you give me some clarification of what that unconditional love would be like, how it's expressed, how it's felt?
Ace. Acknowledge anyone that you attract. Understand that some will be a reflection of what you choose to embody and some will not. Your willingness to allow and validate those who are not and allow them to go on their merry way without needing to carry around their baggage is an expression, in a sense, of what you have called acceptance. This is not my story. My story is this, your story is that. Your story is just as fascinating, but I do not choose to need to interact with it or necessarily condone it as my own expression or form. However, you have the right and reason to exist. Obviously, you are exploring this. See you later, Charlie. Or whoever. Do you understand?
Yes.
That acceptance, that acknowledgement, and again, utilizing perhaps the verbiage right and reason to exist. It may not be your reason, but they have the right to explore their reason, just as you feel you have the right to explore your own. So it need not take the form of, all right, smothering them with hugs and kisses, but your willingness to not invalidate them if it makes analytical sense to you that you have gotten something out of seeing their point of view, all well and good. If not, it will later. That type of trust and acceptance. Is that clarified, or can we go further?
I think that clarifies it. It brings to mind something you had said in an earlier interaction.
Oh, all right.
Being able to learn from what's happening in another part of the world, even though we don't have to experience that. We can simply see the negativity there and learn from it. We can see perhaps some aspect of their life that we do not choose to experience and learn from it.
Nice. And as I have also shared, expanding consciousness means it all expands. And since you are exploring polarity very strongly, positive and negative, it would not be expansive to only become more aware of just one aspect when it is always both. So therefore, the awareness of and experience of are two completely different things. Your awareness of makes you that much more well-rounded. Your choices and your actions, which determine your experience, is completely up to you. But it cannot harm you or in any way threaten you to be aware of other realities, simply make you more well-rounded. So again, yes, that is a direct analogy and extension of what we are saying.
We can then feel somewhat neutral toward people and still be moving toward the feeling of unconditional love.
Oh, absolutely. They can have an action to take it to the opposite extreme that you completely would not condone. But how will you express that? You will express that by saying, all right, you have the right and reason. I choose not to interact with this, and I choose not to embody it. Then you have actually used what they have showed you in a positive way. Used everything in your creation, even that. Now, again, you may gravitate away from certain individuals who are choosing to express a reality that is simply not representative of the reality that you express. And that is all right. But when you are willing to simply validate them, perhaps having no analytical understanding of their right and reason, but that they have the right and reason, and then expressing through your own self your preference, then you have integrated and again expressed a style of appreciation, unconditional love. I will still love you. I may simply never see you again. And one step further, thank you for pointing out to me in no uncertain terms how I do not wish to be. Is that useful? Well, thank you.
It becomes a little more difficult to apply this now in my mind to unconditional self-love.
Well, if you say so, but it is completely up to you.
There's the idea of accepting myself somewhat neutrally, or can I be neutral toward myself and be self-loving unconditionally? Is that
As you begin to express what is truly indicative of who you are through your excitement with your integrity, you will in general build a strong emotional attachment. As you deny these things and perhaps do what everyone else says you should do, you may feel a form of neutrality toward how you have chosen to act. So the more you are willing to embody, express in action who you chose to be, again, utilizing the vibration of your passion and excitement, the more you will feel that passion, desire, excitement, joy, and eventual ecstasy building within you. So acknowledge what you already have, allow yourself to see what is no longer reflective of who you choose to be, and allow yourself to embody, to only act from the center of who you do choose to be. Then you will, I assure you in no uncertain terms, feel that unconditional self-love emotionally in the form of complete acceptance and ecstatic joy.
just the kind of joy of being alive?
And the joy of remembering who you are. A creator choosing to express in this reality under these set of circumstances, and also transforming them completely within one given lifespan. The transformational lifespan that you are within right now.
I guess I was thinking mostly of the neutrality in seeing the things that we do not choose to continue to be a part of us. In other words, rather than judging ourselves and carrying around the guilt, just view them somewhat neutrally and see that as a learning experience.
Well, establishing your preference with them. I prefer this, I do not. The thing that I prefer is all well and good. The thing that I don't prefer is all well and good. But the thing that I don't prefer is no longer representative of who I choose to be. So I notice the differences and choose the preference. They are equal choices within you. Oh, thank you.
There was one other question I have, or at least one other.
Do share.
I did not choose to join you in Egypt this time, although I've been very strongly attracted to Egypt. I just did not feel the timing was right.
Understand that in what you call your dream reality, you did.
Well, I was going to say I was there with you in spirit.
Well, also quite literally in what you call your dreams. Nice.
Can you give me some information on that strong feeling I have toward Egypt and the pyramids?
Nice. You also, as again, all present in some form, have led very strong past lives, through which there was the exploration of much of what we are discussing, though perhaps in a much more contracted and limited sense, and therefore there is the identification with your present exploration of expansion itself.
Can you be more specific?
Perhaps you can say in that particular life, you ascribe much of the power in realizing and acknowledging that power to external sources you sometimes label gods, and are now in that sense realizing that they were all merely aspects of yourself. So there is the understanding of the many aspects in common, but the new understanding in relief of the old, that now you understand it is all you. Again, I understand this translates in general terms, but this is the overall theme you are exploring. Now, any specific lives you wish to tap into, we refer you back to yourself and your own trust in the power of the tool of your imagination, to simply understand that when you close your eyes and think of what you call Egypt, and allow what attracts you about it, how you feel about it to come forth, very elaborate pictures will form and answer your question in a more direct, specific way. But this empowers you to become part of the process rather than place it outside of yourself with me.
Oh, I knew you were going to say it.
Oh, thank you. You are quite psychic.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you as well.
Elan,
Nice.
who specifically were the gods of the Egyptians?
This does not only have one simple answer. Many times what are depicted pictorially as gods were particular human individuals. Early on, some were what you would call direct Atlantean expressions, which perhaps you can say had not chosen to buy into the degree of limitation yet, and therefore had perhaps what you could call longer lifespans, therefore making them seem many ways immortal. They were not. That is one expression, very strongly, that they were, again, physical individuals, what you sometimes call heroes, but understand that as the idea of them, shall we say, after physical death, then was explored by the many civilizations and many reincarnations of the civilizations. They took on mythological meanings, archetypal meanings, which then were incorporated into the mass consciousness and are now interacted with in a variety of ways. So on the one hand, they were discrete individuals. On the other hand, they were archetypes within the mass consciousness. On, shall we say, an overall point of view, they were expressions or aspects of the one overall all that is. So again, perhaps somewhat unsettling, it is all the above.
So they were not directly extraterrestrials.
Again, there was extraterrestrial influence, perhaps reincarnationally more than directly, though there were some exceptions.
I had a very strong intuition as I was visiting the temples that the leadership, the pharaohs, and the people at the high level of government, neither they nor the top level priests believed, in fact, that these entities were gods.
Some did not. The ones that did not in general did recognize, shall we say, their expanded abilities, but were willing to accept a more down-to-earth explanation of them. Some actually did, though. So it will depend. Understand you are talking about hundreds and perhaps thousands of individuals.
Were the temples and the religious rituals used to focus the imagination of the people and, in a sense, control them politically?
That was not their original intention. They were utilized much in that way, yes.
And one thing that...
their original intention was much as the Great Pyramid itself, as forms of lenses for not only electromagnetic, but etheric, perhaps you can say, energy as well. Generally, the more early versions of these things had a particular alignment similar to what you call Great Pyramid. Then perhaps you can say, as your society moved on, they simply began to face, all right, Main Street or whatever. And the idea of the direction was lost altogether.
Yes, that brings the observation that one can not possibly help but notice that in Egypt there's this big gap between the beings who were responsible for building the pyramids and the like, and the present Egyptians. It's almost as though those people that were close enough to the inception of these phenomena no longer exist in Egypt. Were there Egyptians at that time that had access to the technology in a sense of understanding and being able to use it, a mastery of the technology that was used to build that Great Pyramid?
No, not really. It was much viewed as miraculous in that sense.
So it was as much a mystery to the Egyptians present at that time as it is to the Egyptians present now.
Well, in a sense, you may understand this to be very early on in what you call Egyptian history, and to some degree regarded by some to be pre-Egyptian, in that what is generally considered the establishment of Egyptian history was when there was the unification of what you call Upper and Lower Egypt, approximately 3,000 of your BC years.
I see. It's come to my attention that there...
So this will predate that. That will still occupy that area. Calling them Egyptian, in a sense, is a misnomer, for Egypt is a later, shall we say, assigned Grecian nomenclature.
Okay. But are the people that were present at the time of the pyramids, are their descendants still present? And was there some type of written or oral tradition handed down? Or have they left the planet altogether?
The idea is more that they spread out and do not necessarily, generationally speaking, remain in that area.
I see. Well, in fact, some of us are those people ourselves.
Absolutely.
I see. It's come to my attention that there are statues and artifacts and the like in the pyramid and in certain temples, I think, that's made of a substance called schist stone. Very, very hard substance that's virtually impossible to cut with our present technology, but nevertheless was fashioned into artifacts and statues. Could you comment on that, please?
In general, what you would call statues of this nature were added later and can be cut with your present technology.
With diamond chisels and the like?
Ice.
All right. But at that time, how were they fashioned?
With similar technology that you are sharing now. Chiseled in that sense.
I see. With diamonds?
To some degree, yes.
Okay. Who fashioned these particular statues?
What you would call Egyptian.
Okay. Again, with the Atlantean influence?
Not really. Again, this was later. They were added later in that sense.
They did
the original pyramidic structures contain no statues in that way, for there was not the idea of the externalization of worship. That was a later occurrence.
The Egyptians did have that technology at that time.
Yes, very strongly did they have the technology to what you call chisel in stone, yes.
What's the origin of schist stone?
Due to, shall we say, lack of translational clarity, we are not precisely sure what you are referring to.
Well, I'm referring to this very, very hard stone, harder than granite. I don't know where it comes from. And I didn't meet anyone in Egypt that did know where it came from. They just know that it's present.
It would perhaps aid us to have the channel view this. We are, again, not directly connecting with what you are saying.
I see.
This does not mean you cannot bring this up again in a future interaction.
No, I will when I have more data.
Oh, thank you.
And can I just ask about the past life connection between myself and the Egyptian guide Hakim?
You can ask.
Could I get an answer, perhaps?
Depending on how you ask.
Pretty please.
Oh, all right. What was the strongest area of attraction between you? Where were you physically?
I was in the Temple of Luxor.
Thank you. Interesting. Understand both sides of the coin, both of you. The ecclesiastical hierarchy in tandem, and interestingly enough, thieves together.
Thieves together in Luxor?
In that sense, what we had shared earlier was participated by both.
Except this time in Luxor.
Nice. One moment. With direct connections in Hathor as well.
And is this during the same time period?
Ace,
I see. So,
you were a roving band of thieves.
but we were fun guys, weren't we?
Absolutely. You still are.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. At this timing, allow me to once again thank you all for your willingness to share in unconditional love yourselves with us. Though we say many times it is not always emotionally believed and understood that interacting with you is of as much benefit to me and us as it is to you. As we see that many more ways that all that is chooses to express itself, that expands our universe, expands our understanding of ourselves. This is a great gift and a great joy that you freely share with us. And we cannot perhaps in your language express necessarily adequately the gratitude that we feel in the allowance. Again, that this is in your society perhaps somewhat an unconventional mode of communication to allow us to communicate and exchange with you in this way. We thank you. We bid you a most fond and loving dream life, life dreams, and thank you from, perhaps you can say, the bottom of our heart for continuing to interact with us and allowing us to express who we are as well. A fond and loving good evening to you all.